This fat prince accidentally invented weight loss surgery by stabbing himself with a sword. But the twist? He didn't die. The sword just took over his body. Here is how a legendary weapon reincarnated into a 300-pound pig. Imagine a chubby boy swinging a giant sword around violently. He is Prince Adrien Leonberg. He is greedy, arrogant, and nobody likes him. He is tired of being ignored by everyone, so he wants to show off. But in a moment of total carelessness, he trips over his own fat. The heavy sword falls and pierces him right in the stomach. Believe it or not, that is how weight loss surgery was invented in this world. He didn't die from it. Well, maybe his soul did. But that fat bum is about to change completely. He is going to become a ruthless, monstrously strong prince, beat his brother to a pulp, and even get engaged to a beautiful 1,000-year-old elf, who happens to be one of the strongest fighters in the entire kingdom. But you want to know a secret? The real main character of this story isn't the chubby boy. It is the sword that stabbed him. This sword had many owners over hundreds of years. It was the legendary weapon that forged the greatest heroes in history. Along the way, the sword made a true best friend, a boy born in a rural village with the surname Leonberg. Together, they did something nobody else could do. They defeated a giant dragon from the frozen mountains. After that grand victory, the friend became the sovereign king of the country. Meanwhile, Gruhorn, the legendary dragon-slaying sword, was put away in a safe sleep. The king's final request was for Gruhorn to take care of his descendants. Centuries later, Gruhorn suddenly wakes up from his long sleep. Some idiot is swinging him around wildly. It is the chubby prince, shouting that from today on, he will be the master of the sword. But when Gruhorn uses his special awareness ability, he realizes a shocking truth. This kid is actually the direct descendant of his old friend. Even though he looks like a pig walking on two legs, they are family. The fat prince only wanted the sword so the nobles would finally respect him, and maybe so he could refill his lunchbox more than 8 times a day. He thought he could just use Gruhorn's strength. But after swinging the sword for just a few minutes, he trips over his own fat and falls right onto the blade. He never imagined his own weapon would perform a bariatric surgery on him. Descendant of a hero or not, we have to admit, this guy earned the title of the dumbest person ever seen. Even as he lay there bleeding, he stayed on the ground blaming the sword for what happened. After the accident, everything starts to change. Rumors quickly spread around the castle that Prince Adrien is acting completely different. He no longer knocks over and breaks the heavy dining tables, and he stopped hanging out with bad bandits. But inside his bedroom, his thoughts are completely spinning. Gruhorn the sword is in total shock. He realizes that he accidentally killed his friend's descendant and has now taken complete possession of his body. Whether he likes it or not, he is now the rebellious prince. And a pig, too. We definitely can't forget that part. Suddenly, a maid comes in to warn him that his master has come to visit. Adrien gets a bit annoyed because this master had never bothered to visit him before the accident. As for the master, he walks in thinking that even after almost dying, the prince is still the same old brat. The master only came to do his basic duty, but our chubby hero has no idea who this man even is. He quickly uses the accident as a perfect excuse, pretending he has total amnesia and lost his memories. Right then, the castle vassals announce that His Majesty has arrived. The king, who is the father of our chubby prince, enters the room. Adrien is deeply impressed because the king looks way more imposing and powerful than he imagined. The king looks at Adrien coldly. He thinks his son hasn't changed at all, because Adrien forgets to greet him properly when he walks in. However, everyone tells the king that Adrien lost his memories. The royal doctor arrives to do a quick examination. Physically, there is nothing wrong with the prince, except for the 300 pounds of pure fat on his body. The doctor suggests that the memory loss might just be a temporary symptom from the psychological shock of stabbing himself. The king scoffs. He says this memory loss is way too convenient. It's not like all the bad things Adrien did in the past will just magically disappear just because he forgot them. Because of this, the king orders that Adrien be locked inside the castle for a while. He says the boy needs to be shut away and forced not to eat, to see if he can finally lose some weight. At that exact moment, Adrien's mother, the queen, rushes into the room. She hugs Adrien tightly, saying he must be so confused right now, but reassures him that his memories will return soon. You can instantly see the massive difference in how the father and the mother treat him. She says she is just so incredibly happy to see him awake. She warns him that he must never touch dangerous weapons ever again, because she doesn't know what she would have done if he hadn't woken up. But poor Mom, she has absolutely no idea that her real son is already dead and gone. There is nothing that can be done about it now. Before leaving, his mother says she will come visit him again later and tells him to get plenty of rest. Left alone, Adrien tries to process everything. He feels guilty. His old friend had asked him so carefully to look after his descendants, and Adrien ended up killing one. Even if it was a total accident, it still happened. But since there is nothing he can do to change the past, he decides he will live a good life for the kid's sake. Before reincarnating into this body, he spent his entire existence as a sword cleaning up other people's massive messes. Now he is stuck in a fat body with zero talent. But he doesn't care. Brute force to climb back to the top, especially since he has trained a bunch of legendary children in his past lives. First things first, he needs to refine a mana heart. Out of nowhere, the guy draws in a deep breath of air, trying to feel his mana heart. At that exact moment, the ambient magic comes undone. The chubby kid realizes that while mana flows nicely through the air, his weak body is too out of shape to handle it. He tries to force it a few more times, but unfortunately, nothing works. He wonders what kind of garbage body this is. If he had his original sword body, he could easily force the mana right inside. Just then, a maid appears holding a cup. She says it is a special medicine sent directly by the queen. The maid doesn't look happy at all. She is secretly hoping that the prince won't throw the heavy cup at her head like he used to do. But our boy is surprised. He senses that there is actually raw mana hidden inside the medicine. Without wasting a single second, the kid gulps it down, drinking every last drop. The maid is completely shocked because the old prince would never finish his medicine. With the magical fluid inside him, the protagonist summons his mana heart once more. It works! Of course, it is still way too little energy and will completely dissipate and disappear in a single day. But that will only happen if he allows it to. He immediately looks up at the maid and asks if there is any more of that medicine left. A few days pass by. The protagonist is overjoyed because he is finally ready to officially create his new mana heart. He has done this many times before in history, but suddenly, as he starts, a wave of intense pain hits his body. A sudden flashback appears in his mind. Adrien remembers that creating a mana heart always comes with absolutely enormous, agonizing pain. To make matters worse, he cannot lose consciousness. If he passes out right now, the dangerous mana will flow in reverse and destroy him. The kid concentrates with everything he has, pushing through the agony to finish the process. After a grueling struggle, he finally achieves his goal. Adrien smiles, thinking that this isn't a heart he made to benefit someone else. This is a mana heart that belongs entirely to him. At that exact moment, a magical system window pops up in the air. It informs him that the mana heart has finally been successfully created. Adrien is confused. He thinks this looks exactly like the status messages he used to send to his owners when he was just a sword. He wonders why it is suddenly appearing to him now. Right after, a whole bunch of system messages start flooding his vision. The screen says that his connection to the origin is currently being restored. He starts gaining special buffs, though some of his old legendary skills are still locked tight. He looks around the room and realizes his vision has drastically improved. The same goes for his ears. He can literally hear the tiniest sounds coming from outside the closed door. Suddenly, a warning flashes. The system alerts him that all the mana in his body has been completely exhausted. Adrien sighs, realizing the limits of his new human form. His absolute sword sense, the legendary power that allowed him to perceive absolutely everything in all directions with zero blind spots, no longer exists. Right now, using a small amount of mana only lets him hear through doors or see a little bit better. But he knows that if he increases his overall mana capacity, his powers will definitely grow. Unfortunately, he can't do that right now because his stomach starts growling loudly. He is absolutely starving. The chubby kid realizes that before he can become a god, he first has to adapt to the simple struggles of being a hungry human. A little later, the king and queen come to check on him. His mother is absolutely delighted to hear that he drank every drop of his medicine without leaving anything behind. She is glad he is finally valuing his own body. At that moment, a large man appears. The mother asks Adrien if he knows who this guy is. Adrien stays quiet, and the man replies that it seems the rumors are true. The boy really did lose his memories. The queen turns to the man and begs him to help the child, pointing out that Adrien is his only nephew. Looking closely at the situation, Adrien can tell right away that this man does not like him at all. The man steps forward and speaks very clearly. The only thing he will do is help the prince lose some of that disgusting fat. He will not do anything beyond that, so the prince shouldn't get his hopes up. The queen sighs and says that is already more than enough. A little later, our protagonist is suffering through pure torture during training. His uncle, who we find out is the famous Count Bael Valahard, barks orders at him. He tells Adrien that from now on, eating, drinking, and even breathing require his direct permission. He says if the boy expects lazy prince treatment, he should give up right now. The only thing he is allowed to do is work hard. He adds that if Adrien actually changes his lazy mind, he might eventually teach him a tiny bit of his family's secret swordsmanship. Hearing that, our boy is secretly furious. He wants to laugh out loud. Teach him swordsmanship? He is the weapon that literally taught the invincible knights and the founding king of this entire country. Adrien decides to break this man's arrogant attitude once and for all. He proposes a bold bet. In 6 months, I will make you acknowledge my skill. If I fail, I will do absolutely anything you command me to do for the rest of my life. But if I succeed, you must grant me one wish. The old man is surprised by the fat kid's confidence, but he ends up accepting it. After all, he needs something to entertain himself with while stuck in the castle. Meanwhile, Adrien thinks to himself that while he spoke very smoothly, this giant heavy body is really not helping him. Having no other choice, he focuses his newly formed mana, directing it to specifically burn the fat from his entire body. The old man watches him closely. Suddenly, he steps forward and smacks the kid. He demands to know if Adrien just created a mana heart. With a confident smile on his face, Adrien says he managed to do it not long ago, mocking his uncle by asking if he already regrets their bet. But Uncle Bael isn't scared. He is completely baffled. He demands to know where on earth Adrien learned to refine a mana heart, yelling that the boy has no idea what he just did wrong. He reveals that a mana heart is a garbage, low-level technique that only fifth-rate mercenaries use nowadays. Our hero is completely stunned. He doesn't understand a damn thing. He thinks to himself, is this the end times? What do you mean it's low-level? Uncle Bael says it is faster to just show him in person. He tells the boy to watch carefully. Adrien watches in pure surprise as Uncle Bael summons his own mana. But it isn't a heart. It is mana tightly shaped into a glowing ring. Suddenly, the old man's energy grows massively, completely shattering Adrien's mana presence. The uncle explains that modern mana currents have special properties that easily destroy the old sword energy of a mana heart. Plus, the ring current is much easier and way more stable to control. He mentions that even the famous Count Eli family, which stubbornly insisted on using the old mana heart system, completely fell apart and ruined themselves 100 years ago. Now, absolutely nobody in the world uses that garbage ability anymore. Time passes, and our boy spends his nights reading through heavy history books in the library. He realizes that the times really have changed while he was asleep. Modern mages now use complex magic circles, while modern knights weave currents to gather their mana. A knight's power level is currently divided by the number of currents they can weave, ranging from a single current all the way up to a quintuple current. It doesn't seem too absurd to him. As he continues reading, he spots a specific name in the text: Altringen. The boy is surprised. He remembers that a very long time ago, a strange guy who used a bizarre technique, something that belonged to neither a swordsman nor a mage, came looking for him. He thinks the name sounds incredibly familiar and wonders whatever happened to that man. The next day, Adrien is back at the training grounds. His uncle walks up and asks if he read the history books last night. He tells Adrien that by now he should finally understand how foolish his choice was. But the kid is full of absolute confidence. He says he doesn't think he made a mistake at all, stating that not every mana heart is created equal. He asks his uncle if he has ever heard of the difference in quality levels. His uncle gets annoyed, asking what nonsense he is talking about. He says there are plenty of delusional mercenaries who think they are legendary heroes from hundreds of years ago just because they use a mana heart. He asks if Adrien knows what happened to all of them. They couldn't even surpass a basic 2-current knight and were completely defeated. Uncle Bale challenges him. If the boy thinks he is so different from those failures, he has to defeat a real double-current knight in a duel. If he can do that, Bale promises to officially become his guardian, just like the Queen wants. Hearing that, our hero boldly asks if having his uncle as a guardian would even be a good thing. The entire training ground falls completely silent. The soldiers gasp. The uncle gets visibly irritated. He glares at Adrien and proudly lists his massive stack of titles. He is a Count of the Kingdom, the Supreme Commander of the Northern Army, one of the 5 silver lions who follow His Majesty, and a powerful 4-ring knight. He has even more titles, but the storyteller is honestly too lazy to mention them all. His name is Bale Valahard. He glares at Adrien and asks if those massive qualifications are enough for him. At that exact moment, to show their fierce loyalty, all the surrounding soldiers raise their sharp swords into the air, loudly telling Valahard to step back so they can handle the prince. This uncle is an absolute beast. The two of them stand there, locked in a fierce, silent staring contest. A short while later, after a brutal workout, the protagonist is completely worn out. His uncle tells him that is enough for today. As Adrien is walking through the castle halls, thinking about how he almost got killed by the intense workout, he opens a door. Inside, someone is waiting for him. It is the royal physician. The doctor speaks very humbly, saying he doesn't know what to do with His Highness these days since he is acting so polite. He explains that the Queen ordered him to use healing magic on the prince's sore body. The doctor invokes the glowing magic spell, but Adrien, without wasting a single second, literally throws the guy right out of his room. He slams the door, shouting that using healing magic on muscles would throw all of today's hard work straight into the trash can. Meanwhile, a nearby knight is secretly watching everything Adrien does, looking quite surprised by the prince's dedication. Right at that moment, a young teenager opens the door, asking if his brother is there. The brat sits down and starts eating food, arrogantly asking the nearby knight who that fat idiot is. The knight quickly whispers in his ear that this is the third prince. The preppy brat is Prince Gilliam, Adrien's younger brother. Gilliam smiles nastily, saying he heard Adrien suffered a bad accident, but unfortunately, it looks like he is much more intact than he hoped. Adrien fires back, asking if the young prince has nothing better to do than come all the way to his room just to provoke him. They are immediately looking for a fight. Gilliam gets pissed off. He mocks Adrien, calling him an idiot who literally stabbed a sword into his own gut. He then mentions some interesting news he heard. "I heard you made a crazy bet with Count Valahard and are going to duel a double current knight. If that's the case, I want to know if I can be your opponent." Things are starting to heat up. After the brat leaves, Adrien wonders why all of the modern Leonberger descendants are so messed up. The knight standing beside him explains that Prince Gilliam has been famous for his genius sword talent since childhood. Having 2 rings at just 14 years old is an incredibly rare and impressive feat. Suddenly, a maid appears holding a stack of papers. She says a bunch of letters have arrived for him. When Adrien looks at them, he realizes every single one of them is an official request to duel him. Since the prince is known as a weak idiot, every noble fighter wants a legal chance to beat him up and gain fame. Our boy isn't about to back down from a fight. He calls the maid over and tells her to write down every single name on that list. The next day, the protagonist is back to training. His uncle tells him to pick up a sword. He says Adrien needs to know at least the bare basics for their bet to count, because he doesn't want to hear the boy making excuses about losing just because he didn't know the rules. Adrien reaches down to grab the sword, but as soon as he moves, he winces. He is experiencing terrible, blinding muscle pain. His uncle is surprised, asking why he is sore since he was supposed to receive healing magic. Adrien replies that as a veteran knight, his uncle should know very well that healing magic stops muscles from breaking down and growing stronger. Valahard stays silent, realizing the boy is right. He picks up his own sword and tells Adrien to pay close attention because he won't show the moves twice. He explains that this is the foundational training style that all of the kingdom's knights learn. The old man begins to demonstrate the swordsmanship with incredible, flawless skill. The guy is seriously good. The protagonist watches in total shock. He realizes something mind-blowing. This basic training style is actually the exact legendary sword style used centuries ago to kill the Mad Dragon. He finds it hilarious that a god-tier dragon-slaying style is being treated like a basic beginner exercise by modern idiots. His uncle stops and says that this basic style won't be enough to win the bet. So after he learns the basics, he should ask his mother to hire a real master. But the boy smiles and says there's absolutely no need. He refuses to learn any other style, stating that this one is already more than enough. His uncle thinks he is being arrogant, but tells him he can do whatever he wants. Without wasting time, our hero starts practicing. He reflects on how sad it is that people forgot how to infuse a sword with true will. Because modern knights abandoned the mana heart, they no longer have the eyes to recognize the true value of the dragon-slaying sword. Suddenly, Valahard draws his sword and blocks a sudden strike from the prince. He yells at Adrien, telling him that just putting raw strength into his arm doesn't mean the strength actually goes into the blade. He points at different parts of the boy's body, teaching him properly that he must distribute his weight and strength evenly throughout his entire posture to wield a sword right. The boy gets knocked down, but gets right back up. He resolves that even though he is currently stuck in a weak, fat body that can only imitate a fake version of his old self, he will personally prove to the world that this sword style should never have been cast aside. Days turn into weeks, and a whole month quickly passes by. Suddenly, the system window pops up in front of Adrien's eyes. It informs him that after arduous, brutal training, he has successfully changed his body's constitution. His status trait of immense obesity has officially dropped down to ordinary obesity, and his metabolism has become highly active. Because of this physical change, the guy is getting perfectly used to repetitive training. Little by little, he is starting to get built like an absolute tank. Adrien swings his sword, feeling how much more naturally it moves compared to a month ago. He is becoming visibly more powerful with each passing day. But right at that moment, his furious uncle screams at him to stop. Adrien's practice sword falls to the ground, and an awkward, heavy silence hangs in the air. Adrien looks down at his hands. They are completely raw and bleeding from training so hard. He looks over to the side and gasps. The heavy wooden training dummy has been completely, violently destroyed. It looks like a bolt of lightning struck it right in the middle of a storm. His uncle steps forward, looking at the wreckage. He tells Adrien that if that had been a real metal sword, the boy's hands would have been permanently ruined. The kid listens in silence, looking at his heavily calloused skin. Right then, the system flashes again, informing him that he has reached a state of extreme, deep concentration. Immediately after, the total exhaustion catches up to him, and Adrien collapses face first onto the dirt, completely unconscious. Valahard merely watches his nephew fall, calling him an absolute idiot. But deep down, the prince is slowly earning the hardened man's respect. A short while later, our hero wakes up in his bed again. He realizes he pushed past his physical limits. He reflects on his past life. As a legendary sword, he had achieved every possible accomplishment. He was wielded by the greatest heroes, brought glorious victories to massive wars, elevated the souls of kings, and guided nations. His name was Gruhorn, a wise advisor and an exceptional teacher. But back then, his existence was always that of a third party, a weapon used by someone else. Now he is swinging the sword with his own two hands. He is blinded by the amazing feeling of making the sweat, the effort, and the results entirely his own. However, he knows this weak human body will literally break sooner or later if he isn't careful. He needs to balance his training. It has already been a full month since he created his mana heart, and he has successfully accumulated a good amount of energy. It is finally time to move to the next stage. The boy sits cross-legged and begins to deeply concentrate. The system screen pops up, informing him that after constant training, he has accumulated enough mana to expand his capacity. His mana heart grows larger and stronger. When he opens his eyes, he grabs his sword, and the system delivers great news. He has officially reached the rank of Sword Apprentice and is now capable of using raw aura at its most common stage. Adrien goes out to the sunny training grounds. His uncle appears, telling him that rumors about their crazy bet have spread across the entire kingdom. He asks if Adrien has finally picked an opponent to duel. Adrien replies that he has already decided who he wants to fight at the very end. However, since jumping straight into a double current knight will be too difficult for his current body, he wants to warm up by fighting single current knights first. Adrien calls over his personal knight assistant. The assistant confirms he has arranged everything, but looks deeply worried. He hands over the list of duel requests, warning the prince that most of these nobles hold a massive, bitter grudge against him for his past actions. They might try to legally maim or harm him during the fight under the guise of a practice match. But our boy already knows that. He turns to his uncle and asks him to act as the official referee. He says he isn't asking for anything grand. He just wants his powerful uncle to step in and stop anyone from actually dying. His uncle agrees. The very next day, the moment of the first duel arrives. The first participant stands proudly at the castle gate. His name is Taylor, the second son of an ordinary noble family. Years ago, the old, spoiled Prince Adrien had deeply insulted Taylor's family in an unforgettable way. Because of that insult, his family's honor fell to the absolute ground, and they became the laughingstock of the entire high society. Taylor has been waiting for this day. He wants to make Adrien pay dearly for what he did. Taylor steps forward and greets the prince formally, stating his name and proudly announcing that he is a certified single-current knight. Adrien looks at him lazily and says there is no need for so much annoying formality in an unofficial practice match. He then looks Taylor up and down and asks if the guy is even a real knight because he looks incredibly weak. Taylor instantly flies into a pure rage. He thinks to himself that the rumors are right. This prince is still a horribly arrogant pig. Right then, Uncle Bale steps forward. He tells Taylor that he understands his anger, but since the duel hasn't officially started yet, he needs to withdraw his aggressive aura immediately. Taylor looks at Bale with starry eyes, saying it is an absolute honor to meet one of the 5 silver lions. Seeing this, Adrien jokes that it feels like his uncle is the one being treated like royalty here. His uncle fires back, telling him that if he behaved better in his daily life, maybe people would respect him too. The 2 fighters take their stances and stare each other down. Taylor angrily activates his glowing mana current and charges straight at our boy at full speed. Adrien doesn't panic. He punches forward, summons his hidden mana heart, and swings his blade, perfectly blocking the heavy strike. Taylor is completely shocked to see the prince using such an old style. He backs away in surprise, yelling that a weak mana heart should never be able to block a modern mana current. Adrien smirks, asking if that is only happening because Taylor is a weak low-tier 1 current knight. Suddenly, a strange, beautiful ringing sound echoes through the courtyard. Everyone's eyes go wide. Uncle Bale gasps in his mind. This is the legendary Song of the Sword. Taylor refuses to believe his eyes. He violently charges at Adrien again and again, unleashing a flurry of attacks. The kid calmly watches Taylor's messy movements, easily blocking every single strike with perfect precision, until Taylor starts getting heavily out of breath and exhausted. Adrien is also panting heavily. He thinks to himself that the books were right. Modern current mana really is the exact opposite of a mana heart. It feels like his own mana is being pushed around and might flow backward at any moment. Deciding to end this, Adrien looks at his tired opponent and asks if he is the second son of Baron Talheim. He tells Taylor that he needs to cool his heated head. Closing his eyes, the prince enters a deep, spiritual trance. He calls out to something deep inside his soul to awaken. He thinks about how the essence of the demonic and divine swords are part of his very spirit. Deep inside his mind, a massive, terrifying, ancient dragon awakens. This is the raw memory of the sword, the true essence of the heart refined specifically to bring down dragons. This is the real, terrifying power of the dragon-slaying sword. He actually manages to summon this god-tier power inside a human body. A terrifying, blessed energy rises to the surface. Taylor freezes, completely paralyzed by pure fear, trying to process what is happening. Sensing extreme danger, Uncle Bale screams at them to stop the duel immediately. But Adrien is in a complete trance. He doesn't hear a single thing. He lunges forward to deliver a lethal strike. Suddenly, a quick flashback appears in Adrien's mind. A few days ago, Adrien had told his uncle, "If it ever looks like I am completely losing control and about to kill my opponent, you absolutely must step in and stop me by force." And that is exactly what happens. To save Taylor's life, Uncle Bale rushes in and delivers a massive, overpowering blow. Our poor protagonist is sent flying across the courtyard like a rag doll. The uncle is not playing around. Adrien crashes heavily into the dirt, completely wrecked. Immediately, the surrounding castle soldiers rush over and restrain Count Valahard, shouting that striking a prince like that could be considered attempted murder of royalty. But Adrien painfully pushes himself back up onto his feet. He sighs and tells the soldiers to back off, explaining that he personally requested his uncle to do that. He mutters that he didn't expect his uncle to knock him out so hard, and then he passes out cold on the floor. A short while later, Adrien wakes up in his bed again. He groans, thinking that his uncle's strength is on a completely different level compared to that single current trash he just fought. Fortunately, he isn't seriously injured, and he officially won the duel. Suddenly, his uncle walks into the room, demanding to know what on earth he did out there. He wants to know what that scary, impure sword energy was, since he never taught him anything like that. The protagonist looks at him confidently and says he was simply being true to the true essence of the sword. Valahard falls silent for a moment. He asks if the essence Adrien is talking about is just pure, terrifying killing intent. He admits it is highly unsettling, but it is indeed one of the dark truths of combat. Adrien is surprised. He thought his uncle was going to give him a boring, righteous lecture about how the path of the sword is about self-refinement. But the old man shrugs. He says he is not a righteous knight. He is a gritty soldier who walks the path of absolute victory, not the path of righteousness. However, he warns Adrien that his sword style is way too excessive. If his killing intent is that wild, he won't be able to distinguish friend from foe on the battlefield. He warns the boy that he will be watching to see if Adrien gets completely devoured by his own inner demons. 3 days pass by. Adrien is back on the training field, and surprisingly, Taylor is there training with him. Adrien looks at Taylor and thanks him, saying he did an excellent job over the last few days. He notes that defending against a prince who can't fully control his killing intent for 3 days straight is truly impressive. Right after, Adrien calls over a maid, who brings out a heavy wooden chest. Adrien looks at Taylor and mentions that he heard about the unforgivable thing his past self did to Taylor's family. He says he doesn't know if this chest of riches will make his family feel any better, but Taylor should deliver it to his father as an official apology. With their training officially over, Adrien tells Taylor he can leave. Adrien thinks to himself that while he has no real legal obligation to clean up the messes made by the original dead prince, if he makes someone work hard as a training partner, it is only fair to pay them their proper price. As time passes, the news of the prince winning his duels becomes the hottest topic of gossip throughout the entire kingdom. Nobody can believe it. The knights' opinions of him are slowly starting to change, and the royal family is doing their best to keep the specific details quiet. However, Adrien isn't happy about the silence. He complains to his uncle that the high nobles are probably just embarrassed that they lost to a chubby prince, so they are shutting their mouths. He snaps that these lazy nobles have nothing better to do, and should do something productive with their time. Valahard stares at him and says Adrien has absolutely no right to call anyone else lazy or unproductive, considering his own past. Adrien turns to the knight standing next to him, ordering him to manually spread the true results of his duels outside the castle walls so the annoying rumors will finally calm down. But right then, a maid runs up with bad news. A new rumor is spreading that the prince is using a fake magical sword power to cheat and forge the results of his duels. Adrien gets highly irritated, deciding to just ignore the haters and keep training. He executes a flawless sequence of strikes, and his mana heart beats stronger and stronger. He asks his assistant how many opponents are left on the list for today. The assistant says there is only one left, but warns him that this last person is a real knight who truly understands the sword. This challenger wasn't satisfied with just sitting around polishing their family heirloom. They actually joined a dangerous elite order of knights to train in real combat. The challenger's name is Arwen Kurgan. As soon as Arwen walks into the castle courtyard, every single soldier stops and stares at her in awe. She is famous across the kingdom and has a ton of cool nicknames, from the cliff flower to the thorny rose. She is known as a beautiful woman who has broken the hearts of countless men. The soldiers whisper among themselves, wondering why a brilliant rising star like her would come all the way here of her own free will just to fight the prince. They think the prince must have some incredible hidden skill, but they also secretly hope she beats him to a pulp. The assistant explains to Adrien that Arwen belongs to the Iron Lion Knights, an elite order that competes for the absolute top rank in the entire kingdom for fame and skill. Being an apprentice there means you are basically guaranteed to become a famous official knight in the future. Adrien asks why a genius like her would want to duel a scoundrel prince like him. The assistant coughs awkwardly, saying that Adrien had a small misunderstanding with her in the past. Adrien instantly facepalms. He realizes his past self definitely did something horrible. He turns to one of his maids and asks for the exact details of what he did. The maid blushes nervously and explains the flashback. Months ago, the old fat Adrien had walked up to Arwen, grabbed her tightly by the shoulder and said, "Just like the rumors say, you are rather interesting. How about you become my personal maidservant?" Arwen had coldly slapped his hand off her shoulder, stating that the elite order of knights was not his personal property. The fat prince had thrown a massive, childish temper tantrum, screaming at the top of his lungs that she was incredibly ugly and storming off. Back in the present, Adrien stays completely silent, staring at Arwen. He thinks to himself, there is no way anyone on Earth could look at this gorgeous woman and call her ugly. My past self was truly insane. Arwen walks up and greets the prince coldly, saying it has been a long time, but notes that he hasn't changed his look at all. She is clearly unhappy to be there. Adrien sighs internally, knowing it is entirely his past self's fault. Right then, Uncle Bale appears, staring intensely at the girl. Arwen salutes him respectfully, stating her rank as an apprentice of the Iron Lion Knights. Uncle Bale turns to her and winks, telling her to be very careful with the prince's sword, because it is quite poisonous. With everything settled, the final duel is about to begin. Arwen draws her sharp steel sword. Adrien watches her closely, excited to see the true skill of the famous rising star of the Iron Lions. Without warning, Arwen charges straight at him like a flash of lightning. Her movements are absolutely beautiful and incredibly fast. Adrien barely manages to swing his blade to block the strike, but the sheer force of her modern mana current makes his own mana flow backward. Arwen doesn't give him a single second to breathe. She unleashes a relentless, blinding sequence of sword strikes. Adrien thinks to himself that he is being completely overwhelmed. At this rate, his fat body won't be able to keep up. As she charges in for a finishing blow, Adrien instantly activates his dragon-slaying aura skill. Arwen notices the terrifying shift in energy immediately. Adrien uses the extra power to perfectly deflect her attack away. Arwen leaps backward, gasping in surprise, wondering what kind of bizarre, heavy sword style the prince is using. Adrien stands his ground, smiling. He comments that it seems having a mana current doesn't mean all knights are the same. She is clearly on a completely different level compared to the other mediocre fighters he faced earlier. Adrien uses his system eye to analyze her power level. The system shows that she is an opponent equal to or slightly weaker than him. Adrien smirks, thinking, now the real fight begins. The two fighters clash violently, trading blows across the courtyard. Time passes quickly, and some hours later, both of them are completely exhausted and covered in sweat. Suddenly, Uncle Bale steps between them and draws his massive sword, declaring that that is enough for today and that the duel will continue tomorrow morning. Adrien complains, saying he was just about to finish her off. Arwen fires back, saying that is a funny coincidence because she was just about to do the exact same thing to him. The two of them stand there bickering back and forth like children until Uncle Bale barks at them to stop this nonsense, pointing out that it is already pitch black outside and they need to get their injuries treated by the doctors immediately. The royal physicians rush over, casting bright green healing magic on both of them. Adrien keeps his eyes locked on Arwen, and surprisingly, she is staring right back at him with fierce determination. As they leave the field, Adrien vows to himself that he absolutely will not lose this fight. A considerable amount of time passes. The castle soldiers are sitting on the sidelines, completely shocked. They whisper that this duel literally never ends. Today is already the third day of continuous fighting. They knew Arwen was a genius, but they are utterly amazed that His Highness has the incredible skill to match her blow for blow. They pray the fight finally ends today. Before they cross swords for the third day, Adrien steps forward and says he has something to say. Arwen raises an eyebrow, asking if he is about to apologize to her, because if he is, she will absolutely never accept it. Adrien laughs and says that isn't it. He suggests that since they are fighting so intensely, there should at least be a real prize for the winner. He proposes a new bet. The loser must grant any one wish of the winner. The surrounding soldiers gasp in pure shock, murmuring that as a member of the royal family, making casual bets with subordinates is completely unacceptable. But our rebellious prince could not care less about the royal rules. He looks at Arwen and asks what she thinks. Arwen stays silent for a moment. She steps forward and says that even though she is just an apprentice, she is a member of an order loyal to the royal Leonberger family. She wouldn't dare commit disrespect toward His Highness, but if the prince personally allows it, she will accept the bet. Hearing that, Adrien draws his sword with a wild grin, telling her not to complain later when she loses. The duel resumes, and it is more intense than ever. They are perfectly evenly matched. Our boy is having the absolute time of his life, feeling the thrill of a real battle. Suddenly, he unleashes his ridiculously overpowered dragon-slaying sword skill once again. Arwen's eyes widen in sheer panic. She realizes that until yesterday, his sword style was never this blindingly fast. She assumes the prince had been cleverly hiding the true extent of his godlike skill this entire time. Adrien presses the attack, unleashing a non-stop flurry of strikes. Arwen is forced into a purely defensive position, stepping back as her muscles grow tired. Adrien refuses to give her a single second to rest. He delivers one final, massive, heavy strike, and with a loud clang, a sword goes flying high into the air and spins into the dirt. The person who had been totally defeated was the genius knight Arwen. The watching soldiers are frozen in absolute horror. Even Uncle Bale cannot believe his eyes. Adrien stands proudly, full of confidence, and points his sword at her. He declares that he has won the bet, and then he raises his blade and shouts his wish. "I want you." Everything goes dead silent. That escalated from 0 to 100 incredibly fast. A quick flashback reveals Arwen's inner thoughts. She thought being an escort knight to an infamous scoundrel prince would be a total nightmare. But over the last few days, she realized Adrien wasn't actually a bad guy. He didn't act maliciously like the old rumors said. In fact, he was completely the opposite. She remembers watching him train alone in the pouring rain, telling him it was dangerous. Right then, a massive bolt of lightning had struck right in front of him. But Adrien didn't even flinch. He just kept swinging. At that exact moment, she had a strong premonition that His Highness would one day become a truly great person. Back in the present, the courtyard explodes with noise. The soldiers can't believe what the prince just asked for. The assistant knight is blushing, wondering if he completely misjudged the prince's romantic intentions. Arwen looks up from the ground, her face serious, asking if that is what Your Highness truly desires from her. Adrien looks down at her and speaks clearly. He tells her that right now, she is just an ordinary knight apprentice who failed to defeat a scoundrel prince. That is why he doesn't want her current self. He wants the immense potential and future of the knight named Arwen Kurgaon. He explains that he doesn't want a guard who protects him just because the king ordered them to. He needs a true warrior who will follow him by choice, a knight who belongs only to him. He asks her one more time to become his personal knight. Arwen is deeply moved. Tears well up in her eyes. She reflects on her life. She had worked twice as hard as everyone else, defeating all the male apprentices and showing flawless results. Yet nobody ever treated her like a real, true knight because she was a woman. But now, this prince sees her true value. He wants her potential. Arwen looks at him and asks for one single promise: that he must always treat her as a true knight and never as a mere woman. If he can promise that, she will do whatever His Highness wishes. The two of them stare intensely at each other. Adrien solemnly promises to do so. Without wasting another second, Arwen drops to one knee and bows her head. She loudly declares, "I swear my absolute loyalty to Prince Adrien Leonberg. I dedicate my sword and the rest of my entire life to Your Highness." Uncle Bale watches everything from the shadows in complete, proud silence. Adrien raises his gleaming sword high into the air and loudly announces, "In the name of Adrien Leonberg, I officially make you my knight." Time passes after that legendary day. Arwen joins the prince's side and continues her brutal training. Outside the castle, the high nobles still can't believe that a genius rising star actually swore a lifelong vow of loyalty to the idiot prince. Rumors start spreading that the two of them must be secretly dating or having a romantic relationship. Meanwhile, Adrien is standing on the balcony, listening to the distant gossip with his sharp ears. He sighs and asks his assistant knight if his past self was basically the axis of evil of this world. The assistant stays quiet, basically implying, "Yeah, you were pretty terrible, man." The loyal knight assistant looks at Adrien, bringing up the speech the prince made on the final day of the duel. He asks Adrien if he was actually unsure of the old guards. Adrien replies that he was just speaking the plain truth. If the king ordered the old guards to abandon him and go somewhere else, they would leave him in a heartbeat. He looks at his assistant and smiles, telling him that if he wants to, the assistant can make a personal vow of loyalty to him later too. The assistant knight's eyes go wide. He takes the prince's words deeply to heart, realizing that a brand new, legendary era is officially beginning under the rule of the Sword Prince.